Imagine a future where there are no chains, no whips, no looming tyrants barking orders. Instead, there's pleasure. Constant, curated, hyper-stimulating pleasure. The kind that numbs rather than fulfills. Where freedom still exists, technically, but nobody uses it. Because why would they? They're entertained, pacified, and chemically balanced. There's no need to revolt when there's nothing to revolt against. And no desire to question when every curiosity is instantly satisfied. Sound like a nightmare? Or worse, does it sound familiar? This isn't the dystopia of Orwell's 1984, where pain and control breed submission. It's the dreamlike lull of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, where love is replaced with lust, truth with comfort, and suffering with sedation. And unlike Orwell's vision, which is easy to fear and reject, Huxley's dystopia slips in quietly with a smile and a pill. Ask yourself this: what if the real danger to our future isn't tyranny, but tranquility? Not oppression by force, but submission by indulgence? You scroll endlessly. You binge until you forget what hunger or boredom even feel like. You self-medicate with distractions, not out of desperation, but out of habit. You don't have to confront your loneliness, your existential dread, your moral ambiguity. You can just tap a screen and it all melts away. But what does it cost you? We're living in an age where information is abundant, but meaning is scarce. Where dopamine is cheap, but discipline is expensive. Where we can access the whole world from our pockets, yet feel more isolated than ever. Huxley saw this coming. He warned not of the books being burned, but of a people who would stop reading altogether. Not of censorship, but of irrelevance. Not of violence, but of apathy. What happens to a society that trades truth for titillation? What happens to a soul that never suffers, never questions, never longs for anything beyond the next fix of pleasure? You weren't born to be entertained to death, and yet without realizing it, you may already be drifting into Huxley's nightmare, not through chains, but through comforts, not by force, but by forgetting. So here's the question that rattles beneath the surface of your calm, curated world. If everything feels good but nothing feels real, are you still alive? Let that question sink in. Let it make you squirm, because what comes next isn't just a breakdown of Huxley's vision. It's a mirror held up to your life, your habits, your mind. This isn't about fiction anymore. It's about you. And once you see what's been hiding behind the screen, you won't be able to unsee it. Why do you crave comfort more than clarity? Why does the soft glow of a screen soothe you more than the hard light of truth? The answer doesn't lie in your laziness or lack of willpower. It goes deeper. It coils through the architecture of your psyche, shaped by forces far older than you. If you truly want to understand the silent grip of the world Huxley foresaw, you have to descend into the philosophical and psychological roots beneath your daily distractions. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." That sentence cuts deeper in the context of modern life. You live in a time where the absurd isn't forced upon you, it's chosen. Infinite scrolling, synthetic pleasures, ambient noise that fills every silence. This isn't the age of confrontation, it's the age of avoidance. The soul is buried beneath digital noise, behind filtered faces and dopamine loops. Why? Because you've been conditioned to believe that happiness means the absence of discomfort. That suffering is a glitch in the system, not a part of the human condition. Huxley knew this. He imagined a society where suffering was sterilized out of existence through soma, through engineered pleasure, through psychological conditioning from birth. The terrifying part: we've done it to ourselves, not through totalitarian force, but through consumer choice. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that desire is endless and satisfaction is fleeting, that human beings oscillate between the agony of longing and the boredom of fulfillment. Entertainment addiction, Huxley's soma, is simply society's attempt to freeze us in the middle, to avoid both pain and boredom. But in doing so, it strips us of something essential: meaning. Because meaning doesn't grow in comfort, it grows in tension. It forms in the gap between what is and what could be. It demands that you confront your suffering, wrestle with your longing, and walk through your own personal deserts. But that journey has been replaced with digital anesthesia. Aldous Huxley's genius was this. He didn't show us a world where people were crushed. He showed us a world where people were numbed. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." But what do you become when you never make anything of your struggle? When your anxieties are scrolled away, your loneliness is streamed over, and your questions are buried beneath content algorithms? You become passive, shaped, not self-shaped, programmed. The hidden problem isn't just that you're addicted to entertainment. It's that you're being spiritually rewired by it. Every minute you outsource your discomfort to stimulation, you weaken the part of you that can transform it. The part of you that can build strength from pain, purpose from suffering, truth from solitude. And then there's the most dangerous layer, societal complicity. Aldous Huxley warned of a world where people would love their servitude, where the chains would be invisible because they'd be made of pleasure. Look around. Do you see rebellion in the streets? Or do you see a populace scrolling, laughing, numbing, consuming, content in a world that quietly empties them? The great thinkers, from Nietzsche to Viktor Frankl, understood that human beings are meaning-seeking creatures. But when meaning becomes too heavy, too costly, society offers you something easier: entertainment, distraction, shallow pleasure. This is the trade that defines the modern world. And it's no accident, because a population that feels too much, that thinks too deeply, that yearns too strongly, can't be easily controlled. They ask questions, they make art, they resist. But a population that's content with artificial highs, that doesn't feel the need to rebel, they're already pacified. Here's the truth: you were not meant to be passive. You were not meant to consume yourself into silence. The philosophers saw it, the psychologists warned of it, and Huxley crystallized it into fiction, fiction that has become prophecy. The question is, can you see it yet? The patterns, the numbness, the unspoken fear that maybe you've traded your inner world for something shiny but hollow? Because if you can see it even a little, then you're ready for the next layer. And that layer reveals not just how this problem exists, but how it owns you in ways you've never imagined. There's a quiet kind of destruction happening all around you, not loud, not violent, not announced with alarms. It doesn't come through war or collapse. It comes through comfort, through a screen you stare at while your soul slowly forgets how to ache for something real. And that's the most dangerous part. It's not that you're in pain, it's that you've stopped noticing you are. Aldous Huxley didn't predict a world enslaved by fear like Orwell did. He warned of a world seduced into silence, a world where you'd be given so much pleasure, stimulation, and convenience that you'd forget what freedom even felt like. That's where we are now, not oppressed by censorship, but drowned in irrelevance. But what are the actual costs of this? Let's start with your identity. Your attention is your life's currency. Every time you give it to something meaningless, you're not just wasting time, you're hollowing out your very self. Neurobiologically, this isn't neutral. Studies show that constant stimulation from entertainment reshapes your brain's reward system. Dopamine pathways begin to favor novelty over depth, instant gratification over effort, distraction over focus. Your threshold for boredom rises, your tolerance for silence plummets, and most critically, your capacity for introspection weakens. You stop asking yourself the uncomfortable questions: who am I? Why do I feel empty? What do I truly want? Because every time that whisper of discomfort begins to rise, you have an app to swipe it away, a notification to drown it. A podcast, a playlist, a reel, a movie, a meme. This is no longer about entertainment. This is psychological colonization. You aren't just using entertainment anymore. It's using you. And the more you comply, the more your life begins to mirror fiction. Not the fiction of action and adventure, but the fiction of sedation. You become, as Neil Postman once put it, amused to death. There's something deeper, though, something Huxley feared more than mindless entertainment. He feared the death of truth. In Brave New World, truth wasn't banned. It was buried under irrelevance. Important ideas weren't censored. They were drowned in a sea of noise. Endless distractions, infinite amusement, and in that sea, real thought drowned quietly. Isn't that what's happening? Think of the last time you wrestled deeply with a philosophical question for more than 10 minutes without being interrupted by a screen. Think of the last time you sat with discomfort instead of escaping into content. The last time silence wasn't something to escape from, but something sacred. The system doesn't need to brainwash you anymore. It only needs to keep you entertained. It doesn't care what you believe. It just needs to make sure you never believe it deeply enough to act, that your convictions are shallow, your desires are synthetic, and your days are filled with stimuli that feel urgent but leave no residue. And then there's the social cost. You're more connected than ever, but lonelier than ever recorded. How can this be? Because you're not connecting from the depth of your being. You're connecting through avatars, through curated versions of yourself, through signals optimized for engagement, not empathy. The entertainment machine has not only hijacked your attention, it's replaced your relationships with performances. You no longer speak to each other. You perform for each other. And beneath all of it is a creeping numbness, a vague discontent, a dull ache that doesn't scream but whispers. That sense that something isn't quite right, that life should feel more alive, that your days shouldn't pass in a haze of scrolling and simulated laughter. But you don't stop. You keep moving, keep consuming. Because the alternative, stopping to feel, is unbearable. And this is the final trap. Because you believe you're just tired, just distracted, just stressed. But the truth is, you're starving. Starving for meaning, starving for purpose, starving for real connection, for real suffering, for real presence. And the very thing you turn to for comfort is the thing stealing all of it from you. This is what Huxley got right. He knew that the enemy of humanity wouldn't be pain. It would be pleasure without purpose, distraction without end, stimulation without soul. And the longer you stay in this fog, the more you lose your ability to imagine a life beyond it. You start to think this is all there is, that maybe depth and meaning were illusions all along, but they weren't. You've just forgotten what it means to feel deeply, to suffer nobly, to rebel against numbness. And that rebellion begins now. You don't escape a system like this by waiting for it to collapse. You escape by choosing to feel again. Rebellion in the world Huxley warned us about isn't loud. It doesn't involve protests or riots. It's not about tearing down institutions. It begins in something far more dangerous to the machine: stillness. You've been trained to fear silence, because silence is where the self begins to speak. And the machine cannot survive that voice. Your rebellion begins the moment you stop running, when you resist the next impulse to reach for stimulation, when you sit with the ache, the discomfort, the boredom, the questions. That moment is revolutionary, because it's the first time you choose presence over sedation. But how do you actually break free? You start by rewilding your mind. You stop treating your attention like it's disposable. You begin to reclaim it ruthlessly, like someone tearing their stolen identity back from a thief. That means setting boundaries so fierce they look extreme to others. You uninstall what doesn't serve your soul. You don't just limit screen time, you wage war on it. You design your life around meaning, not dopamine. You build friction back into your life. Remember when life had weight? When you had to wait for things? When you had to earn joy, not just stream it? There was dignity in that. Modern society calls it inefficiency. Huxley might have called it humanity. True rebellion means choosing friction, reading long books, not just scrolling summaries, engaging in deep conversation instead of liking posts, creating art instead of consuming noise. It means developing the discipline to think your own thoughts, not just echo what algorithms hand you. It also means embracing suffering. Yes, embracing it. Huxley feared a world where suffering was eliminated through artificial pleasure. But Viktor Frankl once wrote, "What man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for some goal worthy of him." Without suffering, without sacrifice, life becomes shallow, plastic. To break free, you must choose your pain. Choose meaningful work over ease. Choose honesty over comfort. Choose discipline over distraction. That's not masochism, it's redemption. And when you do that, something shifts. You begin to remember your hunger for truth. You feel your soul awaken from sedation. You taste freedom, not the kind sold in ads, but the kind forged through struggle. You stop performing for the machine and start listening to the silence it fears. You become, in a sense, dangerous. Dangerous to a culture built on sedation. Dangerous to a system that profits from your numbness. Because now you're alive. Now you're thinking. And thought, in a world of noise, is revolutionary. But this rebellion isn't something you do once. It's something you become. A daily decision. A way of being. It requires rituals. Habits that anchor you to reality. Wake up without your phone. Walk without music. Journal your unfiltered thoughts. Rid something that offends your assumptions. Sit with people without needing to impress them. Be bored and don't escape it. Each of these is a radical act of defiance. Not because they're flashy, but because they're real. And reality in a world of illusion is the ultimate resistance. You don't break free by screaming into the void. You break free by becoming someone the void can't seduce. Someone who is no longer afraid of quiet. Someone who can suffer with dignity. Someone who seeks meaning more than comfort. And slowly your life starts to change. You begin to see the strings behind the curtain. You notice how entertainment sells you a life you'll never live. You feel how your soul stiffens under constant pleasure. You realize how many of your thoughts weren't yours to begin with. And more importantly, you begin to want something more. You want truth, depth, purpose, even if it hurts, even if it costs. Because now you know the price of staying sedated, and it's your soul. This is how you rebel, by remembering who you are before the machine told you what to want. And if you can remember that, you've already won the first battle. There comes a moment when the fog begins to lift, not all at once, but slowly, like dawn inching across a sleeping city. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or epiphanies. It arrives in silence, a kind of sacred stillness. And in that stillness, something becomes unbearably clear. The world didn't steal your freedom. You gave it away, not because you were weak, not because you were lazy, but because the truth is more painful. You were afraid of being truly awake. Think about it. What does it really mean to wake up? It means seeing everything as it is, the illusion of safety, the fragility of life, the burden of choice, the vastness of time, the haunting responsibility of consciousness. To be awake is to know, and knowing hurts. So in exchange for comfort, you made the ancient trade. You accepted pleasure in place of purpose, distraction in place of depth, certainty in place of wonder. You took the blue pill, not because you were tricked, but because it was easier. But now something in you wants the red pill. Aldous Huxley wasn't just predicting a dystopia. He was pointing to a spiritual sickness. A world where freedom wouldn't be taken, but refused. Where people would choose slavery, if only the chains were soft, and the music loud enough. And the ultimate truth is this. The sedated world only thrives because you keep choosing sedation. The machine runs on your fear of silence, your fear of suffering, your fear of being no one in a world obsessed with recognition. But here's the secret. You were never meant to be someone else's idea of success. You were never meant to be endlessly entertained. You were never meant to be numb to your own soul. You were meant to feel deeply, to wrestle with meaning, to walk into the chaos of life, not avoid it. The pain, the beauty, the longing, that's what makes you real. And when you realize that, you understand something profound. The problem was never the system. The problem was your agreement with it. So what now? You walk away, not physically, not in rebellion or rage, but in quiet, sacred refusal. You stop giving your attention to what insults your intelligence. You stop rewarding the system with your participation. You stop pretending that sedation is peace. And then, in the void left behind, something holy emerges. Stillness, presence, consciousness, soul. You begin to reclaim a truth older than technology, older than civilization itself. That you are not a consumer. You are not a cog. You are not a profile, a brand, a data point. You are a soul. Not in a poetic sense, but in the most literal, dangerous, world-shaking way. You are a conscious being, alive in a universe that no algorithm can map. And that alone makes you infinite. This is the truth the system fears. Not that you'll protest, but that you'll remember. that you'll remember the taste of solitude, that you'll remember how to listen to your inner voice, that you'll remember your own name before the world renamed you. Because when you remember that, you can't be controlled, not by pleasure, not by fear, not by noise. And the world begins to shift, not because the system changed, but because you did. And one person who is fully awake is more dangerous than 1,000 asleep. So here's the question. Will you go back to sleep? Or will you stay awake, even when it hurts? Because to stay awake is to live without sedation, to love without armor, to walk through a world of illusion, carrying a flame of truth, to suffer, to hope, to mean something. It won't be easy, but it will be real. And in a world of manufactured dreams, reality is the last sacred thing. Now that you've seen the truth, you have a choice. Not to change the world, but to stop letting the world change you. And maybe, just maybe, someone else will see your fire and remember their own. This is the future Huxley feared. But it doesn't have to be the one we choose.